This is Tom Fox. I'm the Compliance Evangelist, and I'd like to welcome you to the November series of 1 month to a more effective compliance program series that I'm running in 2017. This month, we're going to take a look at 1 month of 360 degrees of communication in compliance. This month's sponsor is Dun & Bradstreet. The only thing that is constant right now in the regulatory environment is change. Supply chain leaders and compliance professionals alike continue to struggle with how to best adequately identify, screen, and gain visibility into ownership structures of third parties and or customers so that they understand exactly who they are doing business with. Companies can knowingly finance goods that are potentially obtained illegally or sold on the black market. Procurement teams that are unaware of third-party activities and have antiquated systems, they put their company at risk. Without proper visibility, these teams could unknowingly be funding terrorism or even engaging in human trafficking. In-depth research is needed to identify ultimate beneficial owners and third-party risks. No business ties to corrupt practices such as human trafficking or money laundering is going to self-report, so companies must take this work on themselves and obtain third-party data needed to determine risk, mitigate exposure, and protect their brand and comply with regulations. Dun & Bradstreet offers an end-to-end comprehensive solution to help organizations tackle this exact complexity. Leverage Dun & Bradstreet's complete due diligence reporting to know your vendor and your third-party partners. Do not expose yourself to undue risk. Contact Dun & Bradstreet today to learn more about vendor onboarding, supply risk management, and comprehensive compliance check. This month I'm going to tackle the concept of 360 degrees of communication and compliance. We're going to take a look at it from a variety of ways and mechanisms. We're going to consider the Chief Compliance Officer and his or her role in communications. We're going to take a look at how you can facilitate a two-way conversation of communications while sitting in the CCO suite. We're going to consider some of the leadership and other components of a CCO's role and how they will help you have a more robust and indeed holistic approach to compliance. We're going to consider the bottom-up approach to communications by utilizing communications techniques for your employees, third parties, contractors, and those that may come into contractual relationship with your company through the supply chain. We're going to consider 360 degrees of communications through operationalization of compliance and culture. It's going to be a very interesting month. I think as a CCO you will learn quite a bit, and at the end of the month you will not only have information which will allow you to be a more well-rounded CCO, but bring a much more holistic approach to your compliance function. My year-long series of 1 month to a more effective compliance program and the November edition of 1 month of 360 degrees of communication and compliance are a part of the Compliance Podcast Network. Day 19, 360 degrees of communication using the movies. If there is one truism from the practice of law which translates to the practice of compliance, it is that you are only limited by your imagination. This holds true in the 360-degree realm of communication in compliance, as communications obviously comes in many forms. Many compliance practitioners will well remember the 2012 Morgan Stanley Declination. In this first declination made public, the Justice Department recognized Morgan Stanley for emailing out 35 compliance reminders to convicted felon Garth Peterson over 7 years. Think about the power of 360 degrees of communications in the context of compliance reminders. Now imagine the power of short ethics and compliance video training clips going out over the same period of time and the effect it would have both on your employees and the regulators. Mark Havner is the founder and chief executive of Resonate Pictures, and Brian Belknap works with him as the creative director. They have jointly created a series of video shorts for a consulting company on compliance. Rather than the traditional legal approach of telling employees what the corporate policy about compliance is, they wanted to tell a story about compliance through the art of movie-based storytelling that wove messaging into the characters to tell a story. They created a video training series using employees telling real stories which resonated with the workforce. Once these videos started getting released, the employees who starred in them became minor celebrities within the company. More importantly, the episodes started becoming so popular that employees figured out how to view them before the training videos were officially released. Employees would literally start watching them over the weekend before they were released internally because they wanted to know what was going to happen in the storyline. From this beginning, these gentlemen built Resonate Pictures into a supplier of movie clip-based ethics and training videos. In a recently released ebook entitled How to Teach Ethics and Compliance with Hollywood Movie Clips, they explain how and why ethics and compliance training using movie clips to get concepts across can be a powerful training tool in the toolkit of the compliance practitioner, and indeed ties directly into 360 degrees of communication and compliance. Movie clips will turn your surly team, one that has reverted into eye-rolling teenagers when forced to sit through a compliance training video or lecture, into alert, emotional, and intellectually engaged employees. Better yet, they will enjoy learning about ethics and compliance. There are 5 reasons that I think this form of communication works, and I believe create yet another mechanism for you to think about in 360 degrees of communication for your compliance program. Number 1, you can create unforgettable teaching moments. Instead of having lawyers drone on, giving forgettable instructional lectures on ethics, compliance, and honesty, the employees will clearly enjoy a scene of a star like Leonardo DiCaprio bluffing his way through a job as a medical doctor. 2, place ethics and compliance training in tangible situations. Some people just do not understand the concepts until they see them in action, or certainly in a video. For some employees, a clear directive like don't take bribes might raise other questions, such as what if it's not non-monetary compensation or a gift? What if there's no expectation of a quid pro quo? Number 3, it creates a common language among your employees. I've obviously talked about cross-cultural communications, and this certainly ties into movies. Think of the time where there are only 3 television channels on each night. If you heard the phrase dynamite, yada, 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 or someone threatened to call in the A-team to solve a problem, everyone knew what you were talking about. However, the only thing you can be fairly confident that people will know is who won the Super Bowl or who died on The Walking Dead. By showing your employees the same movie clips, you begin to create a shared language, a shorthand for ethical behavior that references the clip they've seen, where they may hum the Batman theme when someone's invading privacy or warn them not to pull a Clooney with their expense reports. Movie clips provide a vicarious learning experience. This simply means that people can learn by watching someone else, and it's crucial because it means employees can learn to avoid the bad or incorrect behavior they witness by another employees and make the ethical move when they are faced with a similar choice. And number 5, it creates mental markers. Whatever ethics and compliance lessons you communicate with a movie clip, it will live on beyond the classroom. If your employees see that clip again, the compliance lesson will pop back up into their minds, reinforcing the point. Sprinkling movie clips helps move your training outside the classroom and into the employees' lives. So much so that eventually they won't be able to watch television without spotting all the compliance and ethics moments in their favorite shows. I've long urged compliance practitioners to bring more storytelling into their compliance messaging. Mark Havner told me that if you put your employees in the shoes of the person they're watching, they will remember and actually connect when it applies to their lives, and they will remember you talked about it. This is exponentially longer than simply going over a policy or showing a PowerPoint or even talking head. It is expanding your classroom. So instead of just 1 hour of compliance training, the next time they see George Clooney, they're going to remember that training, and they'll remember you showed them a clip. So it's a great method to bring to 360 degrees of compliance. So what are today's 3 key takeaways? Well, number 1, remember that storytelling is simply another form of 360 degrees of communication. You're only limited by your imagination, so why not use storytelling as part of your 360 degrees of communication toolkit? Number 2, movie clips and compliance training can provide useful touchstones that employees can relate to for compliance lessons. Not only is it a powerful tool in the actual training, but it's something that employees can relate to, and they can continue to relate to it going forward, whether they see it in a movie or a television show or whether it happens to them in real life. And finally, number 3, don't forget the Morgan Stanley Declination. The Department of Justice gave credit for annual compliance reminders. If you have short, sweet, 30 to 90-second movie clips that you send out as compliance reminders, you're going to get credit from the Department of Justice about this. And this is not to be discounted going forward. This is Tom Fox. I hope you've enjoyed day 19 of 1 month to 360 degrees of communication and compliance. And I hope you'll join me tomorrow for our final day of day 20. Thank you for listening. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of 1 month to 360 days of communication and compliance. If you have listened to this podcast on iTunes, I would greatly appreciate it if you would rate our podcast, as it would help in our rankings and also help get the word out about the only daily compliance podcast involving the nuts and bolts of compliance. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. Finally, I'd like to thank our sponsor for this month, Dun & Bradstreet. I hope you will join me tomorrow for another episode. The podcast series in November, 1 month to 360 degrees of communication, is a part of the Compliance Podcast Network.